Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Planning and Zoning meeting. It's a regular meeting. Tonight is Monday, February 7th, and the time is 6:32 p.m. And as of right this second, all 7 members of the Planning and Zoning Commission are present. Again, thank you all for being here. The next item, or the first item under roll call, is item A, and that is the introduction of our new commissioner. Please say a few words about yourself so we can all get to know you.
Hi guys, my name is RJ. I work for a commercial construction company called We Build Texas. We do commercial construction around the state of Texas. This is my first planning and zoning committee, and I'm excited. Thank you guys.
Well, it's good to have you. Welcome, and my sympathies. And you have some big shoes to fill. Former Commissioner Miss Lainey Cade is here tonight because she missed us. That's what she said. She's wonderful, and I know you'll do well as well. Did you want to say anything? Are you good? I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Not about the new commissioner. No, that's
okay. All right.
I mean, intro.
Well, you're going to be next on the introduction of agenda and format of hearing. That's the next item.
All right, thank you. So for each item on the agenda tonight, we'll have a call to order followed by a staff presentation, and then the applicant will have their opportunity to present after. From there, we'll have public comment and either support or opposition. At that time, please state your name and address for the record, be brief and to the point within a 3-minute time frame. And then after all of those comments have been made, we'll have commission and staff discussion. Following that, the commission will either recommend approval as presented, approval with conditions, denial of the request, or to table the item. The zone change and conditional use permit case that are heard tonight will go to the February 28th P&Z or City Council meeting. On the agenda, we have a preliminary plat for Massey Oaks for the extension of Harkey Road. We've got a zone change on McLean at Bailey, and then we have a conditional use permit for a expansion of a church on Wagon Trail Road. With that, pass it back to you.
Thank you, sir. That brings us then to the item number 4 on our agenda, and that's the consent agenda. Do we have the consent agenda basically is these items that are administerial in nature? The 3 items we have is 1, to excuse the absences of Commissioner Andrew Earles and Jennifer Henrichs, as well as Derrell Isenberg from the January 3rd P&Z meeting. And then consideration and possible action, the approval of the minutes of that same meeting. And then a consideration, possible action, a preliminary plat of Massey Oaks Harkey Road Street dedication. And I believe that one was supposed to be heard on that same night, but we did not have a quorum since I had to step away. And I'll be doing the same here tonight. So if we could just vote on items A and B first, I'll step out of the room, and then you all can vote on item C. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. So we would expect a move to approve items A and B on the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion we approve items A and B on the consent agenda.
I second.
All right. We don't discuss, so all those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Measure passes 7-0, and I'll leave it to Mr. Dansby.
All right, we're going to, consideration possible action plat 21-0082 preliminary plat of Massey Oaks Harkey Road Street dedication. Is this a ministerial duty?
As it's a preliminary plat, no, sir, but as it was on the consent agenda, you can ask for a staff report if you want one, or you could just ask for a motion to approve.
I think we've discussed this ad nauseum a number of times. Do I have anyone more discussion or anyone like to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve the Massey Oaks preliminary plat.
A motion? Do I have a second?
Second it.
First and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. If you would raise your right hand for aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries 6-0. You're good.
Thank you. That brings us to item number 5, Roman numeral 5 on our agenda. And that is the items removed from the consent agenda. And since there are none, we'll go straight into item number 6, which is new business. And the first item we have there is consideration of possible action. It's a zone change application, zone 21-00022. And this is a request by Navamar Siva Rubin, the 1PE Group LLC applicant, on behalf of Mamoon Hussain, Amana Group, the owner, for approval of a zone change from the Suburban Residential 15, which is SR 15 district, to the Light Industrial M1 district on approximately 2 acres, and the general location is the southwest quadrant of McLean Road and Bailey Road. We'll hear a motion for approval, please.
So move.
Commissioner Henrichs, second.
Thank you. Staff report.
Thank you, Chair. For this staff report, let me introduce Samin Bazargan, who will be presenting the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you, members of Planning and Zoning Committee. This case is a zone change request from Suburban Residential 15 district to Light Industrial, an approximately 2 acre of land located at southwest quadrant of McLean Road and Bailey Road. The applicant intends to rezone the property to build a self-storage facility with approximately 198 units. We have received 2 calls and 3 letters in objections to the proposed zone change. As you can see, this is a zone map of the property that shows the subject site is surrounded by residential zone district. To the south, the property is in our ETJ. On the west, it's an undeveloped lot. And the north, it's a single family home. On the east side, it's residential zone district, but it's non-residential use. It's been rezoned. It's been zoned as suburban residential after it was annexed to the city. The next slide shows the future land use map that shows the property as low density residential in future land use map. The property is an undeveloped lot and it has been annexed to the city in 2015. As you saw in this previous slides, the surrounded area are residential to the north, south, and an undeveloped property to the west. And this is the storage facility. This is the conceptual plan of the storage facility that the applicant has proposed. Moving to the next slide, The proposed zone change is not consistent with the comprehensive plan future land use map, as the future land use map designation is low density residential, and industrial zone district is not conformance with that. This part of McLean is intended to be widened, and this process is going to be done during platting process, and the property is not platted yet. The subject site has no access to city water and sewer system. Next slide is for conformity. As you can see, the proposed zone map amendment implements that the proposed zone change is not in compliance with the future land use map, and also the potential uses that we might have with changing the zone to industrial will not be appropriate for the immediate area of the land to be classified. Next slide, please. So proposed zoning is not it's not supported by the underlying future land use designation of low density residential, which is intended for low density residential users. The proposed M1 zoning will be an isolated district and incompatible with the adjacent zoning district. The subject property abuts residentially zoned properties to the north and west of the subject property. And for that reason, staff is not able to recommend approval of the proposed zone change from suburban residential 15 to light industrial district. Thank you. That ends my staff report.
Thank you for the report.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to the applicant presentation. Is the applicant present? You're welcome to, please speak at the podium, and please state your name and address for the record so we can tie that your comments into that. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. And thank you to the members. My name is Mayman Hussein with Roughneck Mini Storages. My current address, or the current address of the property, is 16624 McLean Road. And of course, we are here to petition for the zone change for the existing property. Now, currently, when we first made application to the city for zone change, we did apply for the general business versus M1 zone change. What we are actually asking for is a GB zone change from the current existing zone to GB. To address the concerns that the lady had regarding the property as a residential property, the current property location, or the current existing property, is undevelopable for residential. The current requirements to make that into a residential property would require too much backfill in order to make it a residential property. So what we're asking the committee here is to allow us, as there is right across the street or adjacent to the property, current general business, and the hard corner from McLean and Bailey, to rezone it to GB.
I'm not allowed to dialogue with you at this point.
I understand. Thank you.
That concludes your presentation? Okay. Thank you. That brings us to persons wishing to speak for or against. And if you have not done so, if you wish to speak for or against, if you would please complete one of these forms. I've been told it's periwinkle in color. So if not, we do have a speaker that filled out one currently, and Ms. Letitia Cantu. Here, please. And again, for the record, just to tie it to this, if you would state your name and address. And then anyone else wishing to speak for or against, if they are here tonight, please do so. And I do have 3 email correspondence that I need to take care of as soon as that's done. Thank
Will y'all please bear with me? I've never done this, and I never, ever expected for us to come to this situation and have to speak at something like this. Grandma and grandpa are the adjacent property, and they keep saying there's, dense, residential area. Grandma and grandpa bought this property 40 years ago, and they want to build businesses or industry 20 feet from her home. It's already a flood zone. We've had issues. Their home floods every single time it rains. The house next door to them has flooded 12 times in 7 years. So for us to have this, when the owner of the property bought the property, they should have known what they were buying instead of wanting to rezone for their own benefit, not the benefit of the people that have been living there all these years. A lot of people have bought their homes, and now the city of Pearland, which I moved into it in 1996, has totally built 4-lane highway, Indianapolis 500 out there, where these people have lived there for years and now have to deal with a mosque down the street, which we're not against, but then a school across the street and a 4-lane highway, which enough is enough. When they bought their home, it was to retire, to live peaceful lives, not to have even general business with the lights, the traffic, the dump trucks coming in and out, building the property up, and also the trash people coming by at all hours picking up their trash. No, I am totally against anything. Leave the people of Pearland alone to live our lives in the city that we've known all these years that we love. Just leave it alone. I live in East Pear, and we have, businesses where we could hear one business at all hours of the night, their honky-tonk music, when we were there first. So please consider what you're doing and consider the lives that will be affected by this. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. And you did a fine job. Do we have anyone else wishing to speak for or against this proposed item? Anyone else? Third and final time. Is there anyone else?
Ms. Cantu? Sorry, I just wanted to clarify. Ms. Cantu, you said your grandparents lived next door to this proposed property. Is that correct? Okay. And did they want to speak? Because they might have different rights than you have. I don't know if they're here tonight, so. Okay. But did you send in comments then? Thank you, ma'am. I just wanted to make sure.
Thank you. Well, having heard no one else that wants to speak, I have 3 public comments that were emailed in. I do not have to read them. Okay. I'm happy to hand these around if you'd like. But just so you know, the first one says, I am opposed to the request, and that was from Benny and S.L. Rober on McLean Road. Opposed to the request, Jessica Rober on Orchard Spring Court. And then opposed to the request from, I hope I say this correctly, Mamie Griffin, and she is also on McLean Road. Would anybody like to read the rationale behind it? And anyone? Okay. All right. That brings us to the point of the process where we finished with the persons wishing to speak for or against and those comments that were sent in, and now we go to staff, commission, applicant discussions. Commissioners?
I have a couple of comments. The first being when the applicant stepped to the podium and explained that he was no longer seeking to do an M1, he was seeking to do general business. How does that work when we already have an application in process that is proposing a light industrial change, and now he's saying he's seeking general business? And I guess that would be more of a staff feedback.
So you can always make a recommendation for a less intense use than the M1 or what was sought. In this particular case, GB is less intense than M1, the light industrial. So that is a recommendation that y'all can make when you, somebody would need to move to approve, because right now it's move to approve as presented, right? Which is the M1. So with that, you can make that recommendation. When it goes to city council, I thought that we still will push to city council what was on the application, but it will have the P&Z's recommendation for a less intense zoning district classification.
Okay. And then a second question. With the M1 as is, and I'm not sure if this went into effect or not, but I know that we were voting and having a bunch of meetings and discussions concerning storage being an M1 district. So I guess my follow-up question is, if we were to approve the general business, would it fit, would the storage unit fit into that classification now?
So what has taken place in between December and the current council agenda right now, excuse me, is y'all made a recommendation to amend the Unified Development Code. Council took up that recommendation at the end of January on its first hearing, first reading of that ordinance. That ordinance had an amendment proposed by council to remove the changes for the self-storage uses. So your comments about regulations specific to use are still in there. Your comments about the everything else, all of those uses for the CBD, all of the other things, still carried forward. But the second amendment that was proposed by council removed the strikeout from having self-storage just be in the industrial districts and maintained what is in existence, for today's code.
Okay.
With that said, it's not final yet. There hasn't been that second reading. The second reading will happen before this item goes to city council. So there's still a possibility that council could have a change of opinion, have some bit of evidence that says no, maybe they should go and do something else. But right now, that is what is on the table.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to clarify, maybe I've misunderstood. I thought that the to-use storage is not going to be allowable in GB. That's not one of the proposed categories where it could be. In fact, with the first reading of the ordinance that was passed, it is only in the M2 district. So the light industrial wouldn't, whether this be M1, which is what it's being sought, or whether this is GB, which is what the applicant is saying he doesn't mind a downgrade to, neither will support a storage facility. If I'm recalling council's discussion to have it be in only M2. They did say, show us a map. We might be able to go with M1, M2, but what was passed on the first reading was M2.
So then further, would this be in limbo until we get a final decision, or would we decide on it as is for the zoning, and then whatever came after the final decision was made, any applicant that came in after that would have to adhere to the M2 for a storage facility?
If you allow me to provide further clarification for the intent of the applicant, when they came in the first time, they made the application for GB. However, we know that the city was looking forward to make some changes to where self-storage, because their intent is to have self-storage. So self-storage is currently, by the current code, is allowed in GB by conditional use permit. But the city was considering making it more restrictive and be allowed only in M1 or M2, potential M1 and M2. We don't know that yet. And so if they apply for a GB and they get a positive recommendation for GB and maybe final approval for GB, but then self-storage can only be allowed in M1 or M2, they haven't accomplished anything. They'll have to come back and apply for rezoning again. So that's why they had to make their application for M1 in anticipation that the city council will make self-storage only allowed in maybe M1 or M2. And right now, it will have to be decided, I think, on Monday in the second reading. And so right now, we don't know really where self-storage can be allowed by conditional use permit.
So does it make sense to have comment or vote on this right now? Because I guess I'm torn because I don't really know where storage facility stands in terms of zoning. Does that make sense, what I'm asking?
Correct. And we offer the applicant the option to wait, but maybe they have other obligations. And he may clarify that point further if you would like. But we offer them the option to wait until a final decision is made, because we know their intent is to do self-storage here.
Okay, I'll let my fellow commissioners chime in. I just wanted to know, I guess, the zoning for storage before we move forward and commenting if this was appropriate with the residential area nearby. Thank you.
Just to put a final end cap to that, what I've got on the screen right now shows what was proposed to City Council. So it shows striking out mini warehouse self-storage within the Old Town General Business, the General Business, General Commercial, and M1 district, which would leave it as a conditional use in M2 only. The second amendment that was proposed by council that night removed the strikeouts, so it would have maintained the conditional use permit requirement for Old Town General Business, General Commercial, and M1. But again, since it's not final yet, I don't know if it's going to change in between now and then.
For clarification, do you know when that second reading, and y'all probably already said it, when the second reading is going to be?
At this time next week.
Okay. So that's an option for us to table this until afterwards. And I'm not saying that's what I recommend, or I'm not asking for a motion or putting one there, forward, but just clarifying. Commissioner Henrichs, you had something?
Okay, I would like the city to put up the floodplain map, because I believe this property's in the floodway, not in just the floodplain, but the floodway. So I just want to double check. Yeah. It says it. Okay, so I know that not everybody in the audience can see that because we don't have the map, but this property is in the floodway. And if they're in City of Pearland, which they are, I guess my question is to the developer, where are you going to fit the fill for the mitigation to offset that fill that you're going to have to fill? And then also fit 1.1 acre foot of pond, because I'm looking at your layout and I just don't see how that's going to work, and I don't see how you're not going to impact your neighbors. So I don't know if he can respond to that, but that's what I want to know, because I don't see how that works on this property at all. It looks to be about 90% impervious cover, if not more. You gotta go to the podium.
Please.
When we were starting to look at the property, and based off the calculations of the engineering and the requirements for the city for retention, we were able to fit that in the back part. The map that we pulled up previously was the original plan, but based off the new calculations and the floodway requirements, we did find that we were able to put in the 192 storage units in with providing retention for that property.
Okay, so where are you putting the fill?
The fill.
I mean, where are you offsetting the fill? Because that's a lot of fill for this site, and you're very close to the road, so I just don't see how this works.
Well, no, it absolutely, well, and I'm going to forward that to our engineers that are actually working on the development of it. And based on their experience, they were able to find a way to get this property to fit. To answer that exact same question is, for a residential property, you couldn't build, although we're currently zoned for that, we couldn't build a residential property on that property because of the way it's currently zoned, or because of the floodway. So the same concerns you have for the floodway for commercial property, they're double that for a residential property. And I know this might not be the time or place, but I also want to address this, that we too are members of Pearland and residences of Pearland as well. And we only want what's best for us. We currently have the exact same storage unit on the absolute opposite side of the residences there. So it's not as if there's none there. We're 150 feet away from the corner of Bailey and McLean.
So you're only going to lay down concrete. You're going to have no buildings whatsoever?
Well, we're going to have metal buildings up there, correct.
Right. So that's not exactly the same, but I just wanted to maybe give me the chance to show what you're going to do on your site plan, because I just don't see how that works without.
Yeah, I think engineering didn't provide that to you guys, but they were able to basically find a way to make it fit for everyone.
Okay. Thank
And
you.
it would be either waterproofing the buildings. That's one of the options that we have, but that's going to be as we kind of develop into the further stages of this. But one of the considerations was to waterproof all the buildings.
Okay. Thank you. I have nothing else.
And just for a further clarification from staff, that site plan that you see, that will not be attached to the ordinance whatsoever. That's just for illustration purposes. They'll still have to meet all of the requirements of the EDCM and the UDC at the time. They still have to get a conditional use permit ultimately, and then a permit.
Anyone else?
I was only going to say, I don't, if you can go back to an aerial map just to see, I don't need necessarily a flood map, just a Google map or whatever. It's commercial all the way around it, across the street, storage unit, residential, school. I mean, it's a hodgepodge out here. Obviously, this is ETJ original, zoned in 2015. Is that right? Is that what they said? I think that's right. Yeah. So, I mean, I hate to admit the country is slowly disappearing. The old houses in your neighborhood, where you can have acreage and that kind of thing. I mean, it's very sad, frustrating to all of us. But when people show up and voice their concern, the biggest issue right now is flood. And I understand that you're the limited opportunity to build residential and or commercial here, but to lessen the impact to the neighbors is paramount, in my opinion, in a floodway, flood zone, or any other time. So I would have a problem voting for this just because we have citizens that showed up and voiced their concern, and they're adjacent to this property. That's their homes. They've been here a long time, and not to lessen their ownership or yours of the property, but I feel like that, if somebody feels strong enough and they live with it day in and day out, they understand it better than we do. So that would be my thoughts.
Commissioner Earles?
In an effort to not simply repeat Commissioner Dansbury, I'd have a problem as well. I believe you stated that we cannot build residential. I think we can. It may not be the smartest thing to do, but I think it's possible to do so. I don't think anything forbids you from building residential there, especially because it's zoned residential now. So it could be done. Okay.
Sir, your comments can't be carried on the record if you don't speak from the podium and into the microphone.
No, financially speaking, no, it couldn't be done residential. And we're sitting on, our current property right now is sitting between a mini storage and a hard corner. For the last 7 or 8 years, the city of Pearland has been developing Bailey Road, which you guys have been working on. Bailey Road is developed and progressing forward. We're sitting on the corner, or 150 foot away from the corner of Bailey and McLean. Make it a residential property, it's not feasible. The backfill requirement over there was about 2.5 foot. The only thing that property can be used for, that and the master corner sitting there, is for commercial use. And I understand the concerns of the property that's adjacent to us for residential, but us providing a retention bond, and we have no problem working with the current homeowners to make sure their properties are actually better during the process. So if it requires us for putting some form of, and once again, I have to get the engineers involved with it, we will want to make sure that we only better our neighbor as well, because we too are residences there of Pearland. So any development we do out there, because we do not have the option for residential, any commercial property we put out there would only benefit the customers for the floodways, the residences for the floodways.
I think because you are a neighbor, you should be neighborly and discuss it with these people who've showed up and make sure they're comfortable as well moving forward. Not saying that it's not possible, but if you want to be neighborly, do it.
We absolutely have every intention of it. And with the retention pond there, if we need to work with engineering to make sure that their property is even secured more, we will. We have no problem with that. But to take property and take an investment of a property that's a 7-figure investment and dismiss it and leave it there as raw land when we've spent the last 5 years developing Bailey I don't think that benefits the city of Pearland in a whole. We've spent the last 5 to 7 years developing Bailey and putting commercial properties and widening up the streets. We're sitting on the middle of all that. So our only intention is to make it better for us all, not just for one party, but for everybody, including the adjacent property. I don't know, and for the record, I still don't understand how we had an issue if we've been there for 40 years. We didn't have the issue when the first mini storage was built to the right side of them, or the mini storage that came in right in front of them. But now that we have one coming on the corner of Bailey and McLean, now all of a sudden we have an issue with the property. Because this property, these problems didn't occur when we built the other two.
Thank you.
So if I could provide guidance to the commission, setting aside what properties were in the city when they were developed versus after the city annexed them, the focus of tonight's proceeding is the zone change request, the uses or proposed uses that could be allowed on the land. Flooding is not the issue on tonight's agenda. That's something that permits will have to review, engineering will have to review at time of permit submittal. The CUP is not something for tonight to consider. That's a separate application. That will happen. Can't put the cart before the horse. Even to get to the CUP, you have to do the zone change. That's what's on tonight's agenda. There are 4 criteria for approval when looking at a zone change when outlined in the UDC. I believe staff may have mentioned those in the report. There they are on the screen now. That's what's up for consideration, and I would urge you and suggest that you look at those things when making your decision.
Well, with that being said, I go back to wanting to table this because we don't know what storage facility is going to be zoned yet. I think it would be premature to vote because my issue is not with the fact that it's near a residential area because, to his point, there are other businesses there. So I do sympathize with the residents, but my issue is why are we voting on zoning when we really don't know what storage facility, what zoning it falls under?
Okay, let's hold on to that thought for a second if we could. And I think Commissioner Ratchford, done. I did have a couple of things to say, and then let's get right back to that if that's okay. I guess the first meeting I ever attended way too many years ago in my Planning and Zoning Commission, a gentleman pulled me aside and said, "Don't listen to all that. Vote the dirt." And that's always stuck with me. In fact, I had a conversation today and talked about that. It always comes back to me when I hear this side versus that side and he said, she said, or what have you. through all of that. And I think that's what our city attorney was trying to tell us, is we are here to simply vote the dirt. And my challenge with that is, you're here today and you're telling us you're going to put would like to have a storage facility on this site. If we vote the dirt to M1, or if we said GB or what have you, even if you didn't get the CUP you needed, we have now a GB parcel with a residence to the north and residence to the south. And if that, no matter what GB use you were going to do, that would weigh heavy on me. I would almost call it spot zoning, but I wouldn't, because across the street, as you've pointed out, across the street is a very similar site, and to the south. So this kind of reminds me of our Garden O'Day mixed use district that we have along those two roads that go to the north of Broadway, where you do have, I don't want to say the word hodgepodge because that doesn't sound nice enough, but it's a mixed use, right? You have some light industrial, some commercial, some general business next to residents, and they all tend to commingle quite well. It doesn't mean when somebody new tries to do something that there's not some angst amongst the residents, but they've gotten along pretty well thus far. I guess I struggle with when I hear residents come. I also struggle with doing the right thing. When nobody shows up, you know that there's not that much care and concern. When people show up, take time out of their day, when they send emails, this is an issue they're not comfortable with. So that weighs heavy. And then in all fairness, I would like the city to finish the city council to finish their thoughts. As Commissioner Boswell has stated, we're kind of in limbo with those thoughts. I can tell you right now tonight, if I voted, it would not be in favor of an M1 or a GB vote at this point. But in all fairness, I do think we should hear what the council has to say, and then we'll move forward at that point. That's just my opinion. I'm one of 7.
If I may, where I'm a little confused at with the process is that if from Bailey, from 288 all the way to Pearland Parkway, Bailey's been under development for the last several years for improvement. We do have residential properties currently on Bailey. So this isn't anything that's been coming up. This didn't just come up today. This has been going on for the last 6-7 years. We have current residential properties on Bailey Road with all the development. We have 2 new gas stations. We have mini storages. We have boat storages. And this has been going on for the last 5 to 6 years. Just to put it on the record, we understand we have residences living next door to us. When we go through the permitting stage, any permit or any designs that we engineer on that particular property is only going to benefit both parties. If their concerns is the flooding, we'll make sure we take that in consideration and we address any concerns they might have. We're not here just to put up businesses in the middle of residential neighborhoods. We're here to put up a business in an existing business location on Bailey Road that the city's been building for the last 5 to 7 years. Any impact to the residents to our right, we'll make sure we address that in design and in engineering, because we won't get our permits unless we make sure we address all those concerns. So any flooding concerns they may have, or any engineering they may have, or floodways will all be addressed during the later stages.
Thank you for those comments.
Thank you, sir.
I appreciate that.
I make a motion to table this item until we get a final rendering from council concerning what the zonage for storage facilities would be.
I second it.
For clarification to the city attorney, can we make a motion that's contingent upon, timing contingent upon council, or do we set forth a date? I know in some cases we have to set a date.
In this one, we know exactly what it is that you're looking for. It's going to be the most recent amendment to the UDC. So because of that, if for some reason that were delayed on the February 14th meeting and it got bumped to the 28th, we would not bring this back until after that happened. So because it is a known, we can base it on that condition.
And for the people out here, the applicant and for the citizens, they can follow then the city council agenda. If this gets passed, this motion to postpone or table, on the website, you can find the city council and you'll be able to tell from that point. Or you can call city staff and she would gladly help you out. All right, we do have a motion and a second, and that's to table this item until the city council has had a chance to review the amendments that we've all discussed. So all those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? Okay, that measure, the tabling measure passes 5-2. So we won't vote on it because the table was successful. That brings us, thank you all for coming, both applicants and citizens. We're going to move forward now to the commission.
You can make a suggestion, yes, sir. Typically, after you take a vote, the item is considered
Well,
final.
and I understand that, but one thing, you know, you've got citizens against you. And I'll be quite honest, I feel like that if it had went to a vote tonight, it probably wouldn't have went in your favor. My suggestion is to do your homework, get with those people, and see if you can't get some of the negatives that we saw tonight turned to positives. And give them a plan, show them what you're going to do. You know, a lot of times it's just strictly the unknown to somebody that's living there, not being able to see it. But, you know, that's the only suggestion that I have. You've got some homework to do. We can't dialogue.
Unfortunately, we closed the hearing. But
So for the education of the P&Z, the comments that you just made, Commissioner Isenberg, those would be perfectly placed when you discuss whether you want to make a motion to postpone or not. That would be the time to do it, and then you do the vote. Those comments get entered into the record. Procedurally, that would be the better way to handle that kind of an issue. Or even before the motion to postpone happens, so that just in case somebody argues that a motion to postpone is not debatable, because I'd have to pull out my rule book and probably agree with them.
all right, moving forward, new business, under new business, item 2 is the commission input and discussion, the conditional use permit application 22-00001. And this is a request by Candace McGuire, applicant on behalf of Julian Davis III, representing Fellowship of Believers Baptist Church, the owner, for approval of a conditional use permit for the expansion of a church on approximately 3 acres of land, currently zoned NS, Neighborhood Services, the location being 2834 Wagon Trail. Do I hear a motion for, no, I don't need a motion. We are simply here to discuss. This is a CUP, a conditional use permit. Sorry, staff report.
Thank you, Chair. So for this one, let me pass it over to Patrick Bauer to present the staff report. Patrick, take it away.
Thank you, Martin. Good evening, Chair and members of the board. The request before you tonight, as mentioned, is for a conditional use permit for approval of an expansion of a church use within the Neighborhood Service District. The property, as mentioned, is 2834 Wagon Trail Road, Pearland, Texas, and the future land use of the site is business commercial. A notice was sent to all property owners within 200 feet of the subject property, and no written comments or phone calls have been received to date. The zoning of the property, as mentioned, is neighborhood service, and the zoning of the properties to the north and west are also neighborhood service. To the south is a mixture of mostly general commercial and then a little bit of neighborhood service to the southeast. And then to the east is mainly residential uses with R2. And looking at the future land use, as mentioned, it was business commercial as the subject property, And on all three of the sides to the north, south, and west is all additionally business commercial, with suburban residential to the east. And kind of just going over a little bit of the history of this property. It was originally developed as a lodge for a fraternal organization in 1970. Then it was annexed into the city in 1997. And most recently, the current church on the property was granted a conditional use permit in 2019 to use the previous lodge. And the lodge is approximately, I believe, 3,200 square feet. And then just kind of looking at the uses, the land uses that are around the property. To the north is 3 mobile homes that are on a site. To the west is a single family residence. To kind of the southwest is another church that was developed, I believe, 3 years ago. To the south of the property is mainly warehouse uses. And then to the east is mainly single family residence. And then there's like a commercial property that's somewhat behind one of the residences. And kind of looking at the street view of the property, this is a street view of the Fellowship Believers Church, and in the center is the old lodge that is now the church. And then going to the next slide, we kind of get a view of the adjacent properties to the north with the mobile homes on the left-hand side, and then the right-hand side is those warehouse uses that are to the south of the property. And then moving to looking at just a cross wagon trail, we get a view of the mainly residential properties. And then the photo on the right kind of shows the entrance to the commercial property. It's behind, off of Wagon Trail a little more. And this is one of the most up-to-date site plans. Mostly we're through the site plan process, but this is most up-to-date one with wagon trails on the right-hand side. And then the property, you can see the original lodges in kind of the middle, with the white area in the middle of the property. And then to the right is the new structure that is going in. And then just to the right of that is also the detention pond that'll be added for mitigation. And then, as you can see, the parking area is mostly on the northern portion of the property. And kind of going over some of the review criteria, the proposed use is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the future land use designation. The thoroughfare plan, it meets that with Wagon Trail Road as a minor collector. The proposed use will not impact that too much more because the current church is being serviced and it's basically upgrading to a newer structure. It was recently platted and was platted prior to, I believe, it may have been just after that CUP, as they were going to expand that church, they needed to plat the property, so it's platted. And lastly, it's serviced by city water and sewer along Wagon Trail Road. And then kind of going over the approval criteria for a conditional use permit, staff found that it meets all the criteria and that it generally won't have a negative impact on the surrounding properties. And kind of based on the approval criteria, staff recommends approval of the requested conditional use permit. That is it. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Great report. Thank you. That brings us to the applicant presentation. Is the applicant here? Thank you. Just since it wasn't on the microphone, the applicant is here, and we'll just take, it doesn't need to say anything, but we'll take questions if we have any. Fantastic. All right, that leaves us to item number 5, which is persons wishing to speak for or against. Anyone in the audience? Going once, twice, the third time there, and so that brings us to the commissioner and applicant and staff discussions. Anyone?
I have nothing. It's a allowable use. It's exactly kind of what it's supposed to be. CUP discussion is what it is, and attention looks good. You know, everything that would be an issue surrounding businesses are in line with the existing. So, city of churches, I'm good.
I don't have any issue with the site or the fact that there's going to be a church there. I think it's a good location for a church.
I don't have an issue as well. Seems to fit with the surrounding areas.
Oh, and in fact, I was ready to vote. If we didn't have anything to say, we're not voting. So this is the time that we should make our comments known so that it can be relayed to the council. Shelby will do a great job, so we all should say something.
I don't have an issue with this. I'd be in favor of it. Thank you.
I have no issue with this as well. I mean, as long as the detention meets the requirements, I mean, that's the biggest thing for the neighborhood.
I have no qualms with it whatsoever.
Ditto. So this was much smoother than the last one. Thank you for the presentation. It's a good-looking building. You've kept up the yard. Everything looks great to me. I would be 100% in favor of it. So with nothing else, that'll close that conditional use permit discussion out. And that moves us to Roman numeral 7, which is discussion items. I have some commissioner activity report comments, but who wants to go first? Me. Thank you for coming. So this weekend, and today was, y'all are going to think I was bored to tears. Someone approached me about some land on a road called Fruget, just to the west of Kirby. So that is north of Shadow Creek Ranch. Along Kirby, you pass the creek up. It's the first little road you come to, Fruget, F-R-U-G-E. So to the left, I thought, well, you're trying to put what? Where? Let me look at the zoning. And then I remembered when we took our bus tour with Matt and the EDC that he mentioned that the zoning there is old zoning. It's the old Spectrum District zoning. When I looked on the city's website, what Martin pulled up earlier that showed the floodway, it's that interactive map of the city. If y'all don't get on that, I recommend you do when you're bored like me, I guess. A lot of information from utilities to flooding to zoning. You can see ownership maps, et cetera, et cetera. What occurred to me was that was old zoning, and I'm hoping we get to revisit that soon. I don't think the comprehensive plan update gets into the weeds like that. So is that something we as commission and staff can revisit? I know Matt suggested it, so I'll shut up now.
No need. But we do still have all of that work saved, and that is an item that is going to be brought back to the P&Z in the near future.
Fantastic. And my apologies, I have a couple more. One is this particular, the first item that we discussed that we tabled. Residential node was mentioned, that we didn't have a residential node there. I hope I said the right word. That it's not on that intersection of McLean and Bailey. And if I recall correctly, when Bailey then was a two-lane road, one going each way, and with a drainage channel about 27,000 feet deep. If you fell off, you were closer to China than the U.S., I think. And now I'm mistaken. It's on the south side. We did put it in there. I was going to say that I didn't recall it being on the... No, it's not. It's on Veterans, but it's not on McLean. And I remember the discussions. We discussed that there was already a neighborhood to the north. There was a school, and there was already some stuff to the south. It was actually out of the city limits, but we still, I think, put one on Veterans as well, but we chose not to on McLean. So when I thought about that, I thought, well, we did that for a reason, and I meant to mention that during our meeting tonight. So that was another thing that put me on the con side instead of the pro side for the application. But at the same time, I went through the UDC, and I went to the non-residential zoning where they mention residential nodes, and that's section 2.4.4.1 for those of you that are bored. And in there, I recall then seeing, as I scrolled down, item J, like John, we have a table, and it's a figure that has a map. It shows the ground, and then it shows a fence, 8 foot tall, and then it shows the sight line going upwards, and it has a number 3 here and a number 1 there. And so what that represents is no building can go above that sight line. And I noticed that I went through and I thought, well, is it there in OP? Is it in NS? Is it in GB and M1? It's not. I wondered why it was only in, and I'm wondering why is it only in the residential nodes when I thought it was going to be for every use that was not residential. And the purpose was for a business or a commercial or anything non-residential coming next to residential. We didn't want to have that somebody looking over someone's backyard and ruin the privacy and the sight line of the homeowner. And am I totally off here? Is it just in?
Correct. So that roofline document or exhibit is only in the residential retail node zoning district, but that does not keep you as the commission from utilizing that exhibit for other conditional uses where you have a site that may benefit from utilizing that rule.
Okay, but that would only be in play in a CUP that we don't vote on, and if they had to come in for a zone change, we could discuss it at that point and maybe get them to agree. I guess what I'm hoping for is back then, and I don't know how the current commission feels about it, back then we were all in favor of having every use that came in next to every non-residential use that came in next to a residential to abide by that table. And the table it's figure 2-1, parentheses, letter B as in boy. So perhaps in our next amendments, we could discuss adding that. That's what I was hoping. And then the last item, I promise this will be much faster, much faster. The last item I was thinking of is that we do have some buildings that are vacant around the city, and they're vacant for a reason. One on 35 is the Old Forge Restaurant. I had a discussion with someone about that this week, and then prior I had a discussion about one on 518, and they're vacant buildings, and there's too many rules in place that put have financial implications, and I don't know that those buildings are going to be used anytime soon because of that. And it just seems to me that as a city that's running out of land, and we have vacant buildings, and they're not a good look in the city. Can we do something? Is there anything that can be done to help those buildings have new ownership and new occupancy? That's all. I guess that. Got my first offer of a book.
You need to go on PEDC.
No. If there's no further discussion, since I'm the only one discussing, the next meeting is February 21st. Anyone know that they cannot attend? Nope. All right. Well, do we have any special meetings coming up?
No, we did send out all of the Outlook invitations to block out for comprehensive plan.
That's right.
Discussions.
That's what it came across. Yeah.
So just
was in like March or something, maybe May.
It's actually in May. It's going to be May 18th for a joint meeting. So we got a ways away, but just get it on y'all's calendar.
Perfect.
Trying to get out in front of it this time.
Well, thank you all. It's 7:37. If there's nothing further, meeting adjourned.